We spend a tremendous amount of time and effort to create a learning environment where our students can truly learn the critical knowledge, skills, and attitudes that we have identified as essential for them to master. But do we really know what our students have learned and how deeply? Well, at the same time, do our students also know what they have learned and how well? Which brings us to today's topic. Welcome. In this session, I will be sharing with you a great strategy to implement right away to make a difference to improve your teaching and also your students' learning. On our campus, as do many of other universities, maybe even so on yours, have the end of the semester student ratings, where students provide feedback, and it's mostly at the end of the semester, and it's most typically a rating scale about the professor's teaching, which means because this kind of student feedback is at the end, the instructors then get the feedback after the course is over, complete. And so that means that you're reading these students' comments maybe several weeks, maybe months after the course, or in your case, a module is over. And you receive these student feedback, and you're reading comments like, "Please slow down." There were some areas that I didn't understand because it was too abstract, and I just didn't understand the grading. And after reading these students' comments, you're going, "Oh no, I wish I'd known that earlier. I could have said this instead, or maybe I could have done this, or I could have changed this method, or maybe a different approach, so the students could have done this." Well, there is a solution, and it is called an informal early feedback, an IEF. So let's go back and learn about a couple of terms. These are two important terms that I want you to be aware of: assessment versus evaluation. And before we go further, it's important for you to know the difference. Assessment comes from the Latin word assidere, which means to sit beside. And evaluation is from the French word, and pardon my French, is evaluation, which means to determine the value or something or an act or even a person. And so you might think of saying yes, no, maybe. And you notice in comparison, assidere means to sit beside somebody, a very different approach on there. So when we look at these two words, I want to show you something else that's different. When we're talking about assessment, we're going to put another word in front. It's called formative assessment. And when we talk about evaluation, we're going to use another term called summative evaluation. Now remember, when we talk about formative assessment, we mean to sit beside, which means then that it means it's a conversation between people. And in this instance, it's going to be between you and your students. And so we're just going to focus just on the formative assessment part on this to give us great feedback about teaching and learning. So let's go. As good pedagogical practice, we always have our learning goals. And so I've identified 4 of those here for you, and I am not going to read those to you, but you can look at each one of these. Remember, we start with very verbs so that you can know exactly what you're going to do. You're going to be describing, you're going to create, you're going to interpret, and then you're going to brief. And these are very action verbs that you will be able to master the learning goals at the end of this video. So before we go further, there's a thought I want you to keep in mind. If teaching is to be evaluated, a systematic measure of student evaluation can hardly be ignored. And what do I mean? Remember, student opinion is very important, and also the systematic measure. That means very purposeful. So what can students provide feedback on? Well, there's a number of things, and if we did a word cloud, you might see this. They can't tell you if you're an expert or whether you're up to date on the research, but they can tell you whether they understand what you just taught them, or whether you explain at the level that they can understand, and whether really, believe it or not, whether you care about them and you want them to learn. So Karen Lewis did a major study of many studdies of research on about student learning. And she identified 6 main characteristics when students are asked, what are the characteristics of effective teachers? And here's a sample of them. Now, what do you think these characteristics look like from the student's perspective? We think we know, but since we asked the students, we're saying, what is it that you see, hear, do from the teacher that you know that they are prepared, they're enthusiastic, they show caring? So that is the activity that you're going to be doing next. So what I'd like for you to do right now is get a piece of paper and a writing utensil, because we're going to start our new first activity of this video. Instead of doing all 9, let's just select 4 of them. And I'm looking at preparation, enthusiasm, clear explanation, fair grading. And these are really 4 important characteristics that enhance teaching and the student learning. And I want you to take a moment and write individually 1 or 2 bullets points under each category. Now remember, I want you to write it in very concrete, observable terms. Use verbs. For instance, let's look at the word enthusiasm. If we use the word excited, that's not concrete. You may think it is, but it doesn't mean anything. So it's better to use words like the voice is not monotone. It goes up and down. Or the teacher moves around, uses their hands, and smiles. So those are very concrete verbs. Does this make sense? Okay, I'm going to give you a few minutes to begin to write on your piece of paper. Draw these 4 quadrants and put 1 to 2 bullets under each one. Now, on these 4 areas of characteristic teachers, did you write a couple of points on there? While you were doing that, I was doing the same thing. And so here are some of my ideas of what a teacher looks like or does or says whenever they're prepared. I'm saying things like this: starts and ends class on time, has all the materials ready, stays on schedule, follows the syllabus, can answer the student questions instead of, oh, wait a minute, let me think about this. Let's look at the next one, of enthusiasm. I already said a number of things like moving around and smiling. Bringing in stories and personal examples, and also examples from the real world, is very helpful. And also, you know what? Enthusiasm also comes about when you praise the students and knows their name. Clear explanation means, are you very flexible? Can you use it in many different ways if the student says, I still don't understand? Concrete examples are very important. And you know what? A big test is if the student can describe this concept or answer a question in their own words and not using your words, because that means they own that content now. And fair grading is beforehand means the directions are clear and the students know why they received the grade. And what is really important is that this goes in the category of fair grading, that you return the assignment with the grades in a timely fashion so they can learn from it, and that the feedback is very important. So I'm going to go and check your knowledge before we go to the next video. And so this is a true false. So on the piece of paper that you have, take a moment, 1, 2, and 3, write either a true or a false, T or an F on these. I'm going to wait a second. Don't overthink. Okay, this is a formative assessment. This is for me to know whether you really got it or not. Number 1, informal early feedback is a summative assessment tool. It is false. It is a formative assessment on there. Hope you got it right. Number 2, the IEF is a valuable method for getting timely feedback about teaching and learning. Absolutely true. Exactly. That's the message that I wanted you to get. And 3, formative assessment provides information on what and how to improve. That is exactly right. And on top of that, it's a bonus because you get it in a very timely fashion. So what was it that you were able to do in this first video? Here it is. It is marked in red. You were able to describe the difference between formative assessment and summative evaluation. I'm going to see you in the next video. Congratulations. We've just concluded Part A, Informal Early Feedback to Enhance Teaching and Learning.